Today on the show, we have one of my buddies and colleagues, sports dietitian Joel Totoro. And I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell you everything that he has done. He comes with a host of different experiences. And then we are going to talk today about one of the hottest topics I think that exists across middle school and high school sports, which is, should teen athletes take creatine? And I'm super excited for us to dial in on this and talk on this topic. But Joel, first, tell us a little bit about yourself, all of your experiences, and then we'll rock and roll.
Yeah, so I'm over 20 years in the sports dietetic space. Started initially in clinical ICU trauma and kind of was able to transition as Amy did as sports nutrition grew and we started to get some science behind it. So spent 15 years in football at the pro level with the New England Patriots and then at University of Michigan. And kind of as that was winding down, uh, kind of started to understand over my time the potential importance of supplementation in elite athletes and high performers. And it was kind of an industry that I didn't love. And now that I'm in it, I've learned a little bit more about how much more I don't love it. Right. So, it's a largely, I mean, there's some regulations there, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. But so a little almost 10 years ago, I came over to Thorne, who was a 40-year supplement and health technology company that had largely been available only to healthcare practitioners. So Amy and I could have access as a dietitian, but it wasn't generally available to the public. So enough of us in the performance space were like, hey, we need this level of quality. Can you certify for sport, third-party tests, so our athletes can know this level of safety? So that's what I've been doing for the last 9 years, kind of working with everything from individual athletes to, partnerships at the, team and organizational level, and just educating about supplementation, how it fits in, when to do it, how to do it, these kind of things. And
Yes.
it's been a really exciting ride. And I'm still coaching, I'm still educating, but kind of in a different, I'm not on the sidelines every day.
So, one thing Joel did not tell you is that he was the first ever full time sports dietitian in the NFL. So, he is the one who really paved the way out there. He's got extensive experience in the NFL. We even worked with the same strength coach at different teams for a period of time. So, we all have done a lot of the same things together. But super excited to have you. He brings a wealth of information, especially from working at Thorne and just being kind of in that supplement industry and what it's like and what we like and what we don't like about it and all the different aspects of it. So, Joel, when we start talking about creatine for youth, teen, adolescent athletes, this is something I've been asked about my entire career. I think we know way more about it now than what we did before. But for all the parents out there, people that may not totally know, let's just level the playing field. Let's talk about what creatine is, what it does in the body, and really what athletes are using it for. So we're gonna have a little more of a conversation on this, but I want you to kind of tell me your input there.
Yeah, so creatine is the most widely researched supplement out there. They've been looking at it since the 90s, right? So many peer-reviewed articles on it. And really what it comes down to is creatine is a kind of an amino acid. It's made of three amino acids in our body. So it's something our body creates anyway, right? In small amounts, but essentially what it does is it provides fuel for the ATP system, which is the energy system our entire body works on, whether you're trying to be an athlete, whether you're trying to use your brain, you're just trying to fuel survival for the day, right? There's all energy based, right?
Mhm.
So creatine fuels the energy system. It's That's essentially what it does, right? So obviously
Right.
if we look at it in the sports world, okay, when I'm trying to do exercise, expend large amounts of energy, the more efficient I am at that, this is where the benefits can be. But in reality, and this is where a lot of the research has kind of diverged from just performance, is what is asking my body to do more than baseline?
Right.
That needs energy. Is this the right solution for to fund that energy? Right now, a majority and dietitians will all tell you, food, major source of energy, right? So that's
Right.
where we're going to start all the
Right.
time, right? But we're going to talk through some of these situations where is a supplement exactly that, to supplement a good diet, right? Are there times when I
Mhm.
need more, whether it's for convenience, for the amount of food, the types
Yeah.
of food I'm eating? Is a supplement an answer, right? So there's a huge checklist to go through. before you're
Right.
like, okay, I'm even going to consider supplementations, especially at the kind of teen and adolescent age.
Well, and I think it's interesting because we know that creatine is found in food, specifically in meats and fish and things like that. But I think lots of people actually think it's only found in supplement form. And so there's something to, I think be said for parents and coaches out there that creatine is a naturally occurring molecule in our bodies that we have. And then you get it in food, but oftentimes most people may not be getting enough, especially when we're talking about the elite exerciser level. Fair to
Yeah, and I
say.
kind of just yeah to simplify, and this is not a straight parallel, but you can get all your hydration from foods, right? From fruits and
Hmm.
vegetables. There's times when you are sweating more, exercising more,
Right.
you can you're gonna need more than just from foods, right? So
Right.
was it is if it is just extra water, extra, and I'm not saying by all means try and get all your hydration needs
Right.
from foods, but understand just as a kind of an example, like there are certain times when you're like, okay, my diet is not giving me what I need for this time when I have these high energy needs, or when I'm not drinking enough for my hydration needs. Maybe
Hmm.
that's when I add a sport drink, so creatine I see kind of the same way again because it
Yeah.
is naturally occurring in foods. And that's, and I may be jumping the gun here, but there's, if you're gonna read anything that's a scaring, like, oh, creatine's bad for you, they're gonna call it a steroid. It's not. It's naturally occurring
Yes.
thing in your body that sometimes you have needs for, and rarely does the diet match it in high demands
Yeah.
of energy. Steroids are there to help you cheat and do things your body's
Right.
not supposed to do above and
Right.
beyond what it is its natural set point. So I need that's the first thing I always debunk. It's not a steroid. It's a naturally occurring amino acid. It's things that
Right.
are in our food. It's our
Yeah.
body makes every day. So you're adding more of something you already have, not adding something that shouldn't be there.
Well, and you make an interesting point, and this is a point that I make with a variety of different foods and beverages, like you just said, and that when you put a greater demand on the body, you are putting a greater demand on hydration intake, food intake, whatever it is. So if you're sweating more, you need more fluid and electrolytes to replace that. If you are, moving more, burning more energy throughout the day, you need more carbohydrates to replace that. Similarly, if you're doing lots of strength training and you're using those high intensity energy systems or looking to gain muscle, you're putting a different demand on the body, which could lead to the supplementation, obviously, of creatine outside of just food. Now, you mentioned this a minute ago. And of course, as sports dietitians, we know that creatine is the most researched. It's the most researched. We know it's safe. We know it works. And so when we talk about it, let's talk about it from the adult perspective before we take it to the teen perspective. Well researched, we would say that it probably I would say the two main things it really, really does that most people think of it as are increasing strength and increasing size. So increasing mass. Talk to me a little bit, just kind of like generally about the research that we have on creatine supplementation in adults. You and I were talking before we started. Do you load? Do you not? And then we'll take it to the teen athlete side of things.
Yeah, so creatine, a majority of the early research was around performance, right? And muscle
Mm-hmm.
health. And the numbers aren't here, but just to simplify it, say you have 10 units of creatine that your muscle can store, right? If you're growing the size of the muscle, your tank grows, so your need
Right.
grows, right? If you're growing at all outside of intentional muscle growth, lots of calorie, a lot of energy demands there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those are all things you need to think about. Like, am I fueling my body, allowing it to be as optimal as it can be? So
Right.
a lot of times where we look at it in exercises, you're going to be training, right? That's going to use energy. If I go into that, allowing my body to be more efficient and create more energy, I can do more work. So I do
Right.
more work. Of course, then I have to come in with all the other nutrients, get the benefits from all that work because you can
Mm-hmm.
either kind of grow that muscle or you can be sore, right? So
Right.
you can do
Right.
the work, not get the benefits, right? So it's kind of just, again, it's hard to take creatine on its own, right? Like talk about it on its own when we're talking about performance because everything else has to happen. But at the
Right.
end of the day, what it does is allow your muscles to do more work, which
Yes.
when we're training, that's do more damage, recover more damage, grow more muscle. When we're
Right.
actually performing, it's, I say, like, when I was young, they're like, oh, just gut it out in the fourth quarter. yeah, you don't have to. Let's just fuel that, right? Like you don't have
Right.
to like
Right.
appreciate the effort, but if we are fueled beforehand, but the second part is the part a lot of people miss, and a lot of people who are taking creatine as, hey, I just want to get better. Cool, let's let you do more work, but you got to do all the rest of it to get
Right.
the benefit from that work. So that's kind of how I explain creatine. And then kind of as we look at humans, once we kind of thought about it and there was time to do the research and control for them,
Hmm.
then we start looking at, okay, well, the brain uses a ton of energy. Does creatine help with that, right?
Right.
Bone health and cognition and, kind of really everything. Our gut lining needs energy to
Hmm.
repair. Like all these things that use energy. Am I getting enough in my food to meet my total body energy needs for the day?
Right.
Because we think about, I'm looking at my training, you know, am I fueling my training, forgetting I'm growing, I'm healing, I'm recovering, I'm
Right.
sick, I'm stressed. Those all take energy. So
Right.
am I giving my body the total energy needs? And then if not, am I supplementing to support everything I'm asking of my body?
Yep, love that. And so we know that obviously at the adult level, it works, it's safe. Obviously, we'll talk about safety in a minute, but let's look at some of the research as it relates to youth and teen athletes. You and I have both kind of looked at it and it exists, but it's a little slim in what we've got going, which oftentimes makes people leery of, making the recommendation. Should a teen athlete take creatine? And do we have enough research to say that that's safe? So talk to me a little bit about the
Yeah.
research that's out there. You and I have kind of conversed on this, and then what that leads to, or what it lends to in regards to a recommendation or a like, oh, hey, yeah, we think that could be fine for younger athletes.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So nutrition research, specifically in teens and adolescents, it is tough to look at for a number of reasons.
Yep.
One, it's just, does this make sense? Is it ethical to be doing in
Yeah.
in growing children? But two, it's accounting for different stages of puberty, different stages of, because within a age group, you know,
Yep. We
12
talked
to
about
12
this
to
like a
16, like, come on. There's no two people like, there's no such thing as a similar cohort, right? They're all
right,
over the map, right? But then
right.
are we accounting for the needs of growth, of training, of all that stuff? So
Mhm.
it's relatively lean on the, does creatine impact adolescent performance? Straight up,
Right.
one for one. We took this,
Mandatory.
this is
Yeah.
what we measured. Now, it has been researched pretty significantly in medical situations, like whether
Right.
it's TBIs, whether it's muscular dystrophy,
TBIs,
some energy. Yeah,
definition, concussion.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay. Concussion.
yeah,
We're speaking.
yeah,
Okay. Keep going. Yes. And
yeah.
other like issues. Yeah, exactly. Other
Yeah.
health issues.
So, and that's been like as young as infants, right? Now,
Right.
those are
Right.
in medical situations, and so there's kind of I always say, like, what do we think? What do we know? What can we
Yeah.
prove? We're kind of in this. Okay,
Mhm.
we know it helps these specific situations. We know those have been monitored under
Right.
pretty strict medical situations, right? Like barriers, which would have identified issues if there were
Right.
issues, right?
Right.
And then we know it helps performance in adults. That's kind of proven,
Mhm.
right? So it's like very sick, very elite, both proven to be okay. There's some benefit
Yeah.
here, right? With very little to no demonstrated side effects. And I believe it was, I don't know, somewhere after 2020, it
Hmm.
has been named generally guarded as safe, which is
Yeah.
an FDA kind of safeguard around what could be used as ingredients in
Right.
food. So that's just another kind of peace of mind for people
Hmm.
considering, is this something that makes sense for me? So it's one of those, like, yes, I'm fairly confident if we do the studies in athletes
Yeah.
in adolescents, specifically. The older you are, I would say the closer to the adult body, the less concern we have. Like you're,
Right.
as far as research and science, like you're, once you're kind of finished growing and you're 16 and 200 pounds, I've got a lot less concerns, right? It's just a
Right.
matter of, so there's kind of two things I always answer this is it safe in teens? Probably. Is it my first tool in my toolbox? Probably not, right? There's
Right.
so many other things that we need to account for. Like,
Hmm.
so few people even get the calories they need to grow and then
Right.
to train on top of that. So so many times and I've been guilty of it too, like doing this, all right, this is what I do off season, blah, blah, blah. I was like, wait, you're still growing. That's a whole bunch more energy and calories and nutrients I need to account for. So I think a lot of times the idea to just creatine's a quick fix and I want to get huge, that's not what it does.
Yeah.
Right. It allows you to do more work, allows you to put the work in, which is great. We want you to be doing that, right? But it doesn't, if you're not doing everything else, creatine alone isn't going to creatine without a training program isn't going to do anything.
Right.
Creatine
It's
without a recovery program, not going to do too much, right?
right.
So as far as muscle health is concerned. So
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. And like you've said it a few times, but generally regarded as safe. And the thought is that even though most of the research is not done on exercise performance in young athletes, it tends to be, there's a few of them done and they're all done in soccer and swimming. I have no idea why soccer and swimming, but soccer and swimming is where they see a little bit of, the research. But as you mentioned, because creatine is used as a supplement in a variety of health conditions and it has proven itself to be safe, technically it should extrapolate to safety in regards to an athlete taking it for performance because we know of the safety of it in the adult population. To your point, though, one of my biggest challenges working with high school athletes for like 18 plus years is that oftentimes they really just don't even have a diet to support what they're needing. And it's hard to measure at that growth and development age how much nutrition they actually need. But, the athlete that tells me, I want to take creatine. And I'm like, well, let's look at your day. What do you eat for breakfast? They're like, well, I don't eat breakfast. And I'm like, all right, we got bigger fish to fry here than taking creatine. So I do think that you made an excellent point in that. Can creatine benefit performance? Yes, but it's got to be on top of a solid diet, solid hydration plan, solid training plan, solid recovery plan. And that's where oftentimes I like to say many athletes take creatine as a replacement instead of a supplement
Right.
to a good diet and to a new training plan because like you said, it's not just the end all be all, the thing that's going to fix everything. You've got to do the other things as well to be able to see the results that you're really wanting to see.
Yeah. And I mean, I always talk about it when I'm talking with, teens and adolescents. If we're talking about creatine, we have to be talking carbohydrate, hydration, and protein too.
Yep.
Like it's a package deal. Like
Yep.
there it needs to be have a solution for all of those. So I think that's kind of how I look at it. Like,
Yeah.
but on the flip side, we also see what athletes are taking and what all these supplements and energy drinks and all these things. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
let's fuel the energy. If you're going to be taking let's take the one that's most, or if you've
Right.
got,
Researched.
$2 to spend
Oh,
per day on a supplement, creatine's probably going to go a little bit further for you than just max dose caffeine or some
right.
crazy proprietary blend of nothing,
Right.
right? So
Totally.
it's I say it's kind of research informed. It's not quite research backed, the
Yeah.
use in
I like
teens,
it.
but it's informed kind of by all the kind of decades of research around it.
And I think it's important to note that what we're saying about teen athletes, like you've got to have the carbs, the protein, the hydration, the recovery. You and I have worked both in teen athletes and college athletes and professional athletes. And we're preaching that same message at all of those levels. So I think that that's important to note that, we're saying those same things, creatine as a supplement, not a replacement at all levels. I find that at the high school level, when you have growth and development and training and recovery and school and all the different things, just the demand for calories is so high and trying to help those kids get enough nutrition and then say, okay, can creatine be a supplement to help you meet your goals or help you further enhance athletic performance on top of what you're already doing from a dietary standpoint. Now, when we start talking about supplementing, that leads us to the generalized, just hot topic word of supplements, which we know very well. You know more than probably most in this area. And so we're talking about good diet, we're talking about supplementing, but let's talk about what makes a supplement safe. Obviously, a lot of people believe that if they buy it at the store, it's safe. If they can order it online, it's safe. And so I'd love for us to dial in on helping parents, coaches, and young athletes understand that if they're going to take creatine and or any other supplement on the market, what they need to be looking for, what third-party testing is, and why it's so important.
Yeah, so I think when we kind of started out, the supplement industry was smaller, and it was
Small, Joel, so
mostly
small. like this
Yeah, so
big.
small. There was
Well, it
like
was
five
small, but
companies.
there were like nothing, there was like nothing third party tested.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
for
nothing. There
sure.
was like six supplements. Like
Yeah. But back then it was more, the concern was largely, do they actually work, right? The
right.
idea of a tainted supplement, you kind of had to go out of your way to be kind of cheating to find
Yeah.
some of the things that are in. But as our food supply and our manufacturing, as it grew, and there were more and more people trying to cut corners, the
Hmm.
chance of having a tainted, it's, we've had positive drug tests at the, Olympic and professional level from electrolytes, from, whey protein, from things that I
Hmm.
normally 20 years ago would have been like, yeah, you're probably okay,
Yeah.
right? Like, but now, so more than ever, you have to be super diligent. So, fortunately, over the last 20 years, they have been programs for third-party testing, which means Thorne is a supplement manufacturer. We take pride in the supplements we make, but you don't have to take my word for it, right? Because there's no difference
Right.
between me telling you I have a clean product and your neighbor down the street that's,
Right.
making it in their garage, right? Um, it's a little hyperbole there,
No,
but
that's what
yeah,
I've always told like 16-year-old boys. I'm like, if all of you got together and could conjure up enough money to make a supplement, you too could make it and actually get it into the market. And that's what's really scary about
yeah,
it. So I've used the garage example myself. It's not
yeah.
just you.
Um, but yeah, so this is third-party testing. So you in at the pro level, there's different levels to it. There's different certifications, but at the pro level, you have to make sure every batch of every product that you take is banned substance free because your livelihood, your paycheck, your
Yep.
eligibility, all tied to that, right? So there's kind of like a couple steps to it. So one, you just have to make sure your facility is certified, which means you're at least doing what you're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's sad we have to check for that. But is it
Well, and
even in a
let's let,
place?
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, because a lot of, especially when you start getting in international markets,
Yep.
what we would assume is a factory standards of cleanliness and potentially tainting, but we've all seen the photos from overseas of kind of undercover
Yeah.
audits, and there's a motorbike hanging in this corner. There's just vats of stuff here. It's a dirt floor, like
Yeah.
not at all what we would like. I'm assuming like in my head, if I'm not thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably made like next door to where they make pharmaceuticals, right? Not true at
Yeah.
all, but
Not
that's like
true.
where
Yeah.
our brains all go, right? So one, it's just, is it actually like a facility that understands manufacturing, understands
Right.
safety, the very minimum, right?
And a lot
And
of
then
that, what I
that's
was going to say real quick was it also means it understands cleanliness because
mhm,
part of the problems are supplements are laced with things that
mhm,
potentially were created in that lab before that
mhm,
product was. And so, to your point, is it safe? It's also like, did they do their due diligence with cleaning so that there's not
for
residues
sure.
of whatever it is on their manufacturing, equipment or whatnot?
Yep. Yeah. So then the next step is this higher level of certified for sport, or so NSF does certified for sport, Informed Choice does inform sport, similar, where
Hmm.
every batch of that product is tested because some of the other testing you just submit once a year, or they pick a product off the shelf. They kind of spot check,
Right.
which is probably good for 98% of us. But
Yeah.
when you are tied to that, because you never know, and it's
Hmm.
not always like we said, it's not always an intentional doping
Right.
of a product. It's something that's legal for sale in America, but not legal for competition. And if they make that product, they don't clean it very well. Trace amounts in
Hmm.
your protein powder could
Yeah.
be enough for you to trigger, right? So this third party testing at the highest level, they test every batch for over 200 banned substances. So combined
Hmm.
from the Olympics and the pro sports, those combined lists, to make sure those aren't in it. But then it goes kind of a step further, and this is where I think like non-drug tested athletes, moms, parents, anyone should kind of be expecting this from their supplements. Is it looks at, is everything on the label there in the amount that it
Right.
says it is, which
Right.
a lot of times you're buying filler and cornstarch, right? And then
Hmm.
is there everything that's on the label, is it in there and nothing else, right? Is there anything that's
Right.
not on the label?
Right.
And then it goes further, it looks at pesticides and heavy metal, which is where a lot of the contamination comes in. And it's something I didn't
Yeah.
think about until I got in there. But, even bringing into our facility, nothing can come in on wood pallets because there could be bugs or pesticides on those, right?
Right.
If you've got cotton on top of your supplement. Again, something I would have never. And I started my career in pharmacy. I pulled thousands of those out. Never once thought about the cleanliness of cotton, right?
Hmm.
So it's all these things. And you're like, oh, okay. If somebody else is thinking about this, I feel a lot better about kind of the global product as a whole. And then the other thing, and I always tell people, if you're reading your supplement and it's claiming things and you're reading it in like monster truck voice, like white hot heat and blazing intensity are not clinical
Uh,
terms, right?
no, not at all.
So NSF for sport guarantees if you say anything on your like supports energy metabolism, you
Right.
have to have research papers to back that up, right? You can't
Right.
just make stuff up and put it on a label, which you
Right.
can to get it to the market. And then it takes a while for the Federal Trade Commission or the FDA to be like, that's not
Mhm.
something you can say. But in the meantime,
Right.
you're selling it, right? So
Right. Exactly.
all just safeguards against if you're going to take
Yeah.
a supplement to understand, like, let's make sure. And honestly, like, especially, when you're younger, I want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, right? Like, is
Yeah.
this product actually working, right? So, yes, I read the
Yeah.
research and it said this. Yeah, but that's the form they use that
Yeah.
actually gets absorbed, right? So, and
Yeah.
that's not true of every supplement on the market. There's a lot of binders and fillers and things that
Yeah.
aren't bad for you or not necessarily harmful, but they may interact with the absorption. So yes, you're
Mhm.
ingesting 20 grams of protein. Are you absorbing 20 grams of protein? And
Yeah.
that's a whole different ball game. So
Yeah. So for all the people out there that heard the names he tossed out there, but they're like, what was the name of that? So there's two, I would say, major gold standards that we use in sports, specifically sports that get drug tested. NSF certified for sport. And the website is nsfsport.com. We'll drop these in the show notes. So nsfsport.com. They also have an app, NSF Sport, and you can search products by name of the actual brand and by the product. So you can search it both ways. Do not assume that because a brand certifies some of its supplements that it certifies all of its supplements. I've run across that where they're not all certified. So NSF certified for sport. Second one is Informed Choice, which has Informed Sport, which is the second kind of gold standard when it comes to sport. Their website is WeTestYouTrust.com. So it's WeTestYouTrust.com. And they have an app as well. It's Informed Sport, like literally NSF Sport, Informed Sport. And you can download these for free. You can search their products, you can search the brand names, all of the different things. And so what I always tell athletes is if you're going to choose to take a supplement, parents, if you're going to choose to buy a supplement for your athlete, do your due diligence. Like even if you're not getting drug tested, I'm going to give a story example because this was real life. I saw years ago, this kid's probably 30 now, but years ago, I saw a 16-year-old pretty into supplements, was not an athlete, like really liked going to the gym, working out, etc. 16-year-old taking every supplement under the sun. Parents weren't really watching it. He was buying whatever and really did not necessarily want to be on a nutrition plan. He loved his supplements. Fast forward 4 years, he was in college and came back. He's, sent me a message. Can I come back and see you again? And I said, sure. This kid ended up in the hospital with liver failure due to some of the supplements he was taking. He was taking things that had ingredients in them, to your point, Joel, that were not on the label. And this kid went into liver failure. I mean, it's kind of dramatic, but he almost died. And people are like, it sounds so dramatic, but it is. I can see this kid. I mean, this was so long ago, but I can see him. You would have imagined his tone change the second time I saw him after he had had this experience. And so, what I like to remind parents and young athletes is, yeah, it can happen to you. Even in the professional world, I would get players that are like, Aim, I've been taking this supplement for 3 years. It's never tested me positive on a drug test. And my argument is to your batch testing. Right. But the batch you're taking right now is not the batch you were taking 3 months ago. And this batch could be different. And so, really doing due diligence to look at the supplements, make sure that they're third party tested, because I've done a lot of work, and I know you have too, at the Taylor Hooten Foundation. They're an anti performance enhancing drug organization. And so, I've seen some of the stuff that they've pulled just in regards to supplements. And like on average, they say that like 20-ish percent, like 18 to 21%, I think it is, or 20-ish percent of supplements sold legally at the local supplement store or online are laced with something that's not on the ingredient list.
Mhm.
Like that's a fifth. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
fifth of the products that have not, I'm not saying it's something that's going to kill you, but they have some ingredient that is laced into it, meaning accidentally ended up there that was not on the ingredient list. And so that's important because, like I tell people, I don't care if you go play professional sports or not, as a human, you need to know what you're putting in your body and making sure that you are choosing safe supplements, just like we want people to choose safe foods and all the different things. And foods are so highly regulated, we don't have to stress out as much about it. But just the importance of doing your due diligence to look at what you're taking and be willing to pay for the check mark that says, yeah, we've done our due diligence to prove that what you're taking is safe and, relatively speaking, pretty free of harm.
Yeah, you make some great points, and it always frustrates me. I think it leads to, and you'll hear, oh, well, so and so was taking creatine and they're had liver failure. It wasn't the creatine, it was everything else, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of two sides of that. So one, obviously, the most important is, yeah, is it reputable? Are you getting, lead? I've had people like it was a natural farmers market electrolytes, but the water they were getting it from was like wildly heavy in heavy metals, right? So they
Yeah.
had heavy metal toxicity,
Wow.
thinking they were doing the right thing, right?
Oh,
So
gosh.
there's
Yeah.
the accidental exposure, or companies just cutting corners. But then if you look at in the industry, so one of the things I like about NSF or Informed Sport is the amount is actually in there, right? Because
Right.
very rarely, even at Thorne with our trusted partners, we'll get ingredients that are totally safe, something we could use, but they're like this batch of, say it's a plant-based product. This batch is a little bit weaker. This crop is a little bit weaker, so it
Mhm.
doesn't meet our to say X amount is in this one scoop, right? So
Yeah.
there's the safety side of it, but then there's, are you getting your money's worth, right? So
Yeah.
and there's not as much regulation outside of, and this is all voluntary. So the companies who voluntarily submit to these third party products, even like I like to say, it means they're doing everything right, probably leading
Right.
into it. So if you are taking creatine from this company and you're like, all right, I just, for non-drug tested athletes,
Mhm.
generally I feel better about those companies, even if not every
Right.
one of their products certified.
Right.
They're at
Yeah.
least doing most of the, they're at least
Right.
doing what they're supposed to. And that's not true for every supplement
Right.
company.
Yeah. And to Joel's point, even if you're not getting drug tested, do your due diligence. But if you are getting drug tested, by all means, make sure that supplement is on the list. Like you
Yeah.
just can't risk it. I've seen so many times. Now there's athletes that do the wrong thing. I get it. But you'll see athletes that they'll say, "Well, I didn't know I was taking anything wrong or bad." And people are like, "Oh, yeah, right." And I'm like, "Oh, well, no, they may not have really known if something was laced into a product." So I think, where we can, as consumers, can do the best for our bodies, if you're a parent or coach for your athlete, for your kid, is really double checking and not letting them just purchase what the kid down the road, like what he takes. I don't care if he's the best player on the team. Don't just take what he takes. Like, do your due diligence to check. Like, I mean, I've preached this so long to athletes, and I just feel like I can't say it loud enough because you just never know what might test you positive. And so if you're at least go the safe route, you'll know you can have some really, really, I'd say pretty good certainty that you're going to be okay. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And one thing I would say, you and I think because it's our life, we forget to remind people, uh, look at your product and if it's a nutrition facts label or supplement facts, because I think supplements, I always think pills, powders, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
beverages, it's
Yep.
bars and cookies and all these things. So if it
Yep.
has a supplement facts label, it means it's been kind of enhanced with some kind of something that we would consider a supplement if it was a standalone. So those are other things you have to worry about. It's not just the
Yep.
pills, powders. It's especially the cans that are out there. Golly, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
It's hard to
Well,
keep up with.
yeah. And to parents out there, I would say, so if it has a nutrition facts label on the back, nutrition facts label means FDA. It's gone through all the FDA things. It has to follow nutrition facts protocols. If it has supplement facts, the protocols are lighter. And it's just, things are, relatively speaking, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that things are deemed safe until proven otherwise in the market, typically when it comes to supplements.
Yeah, so supplements you can get onto the market easier. Now,
Than
eventually down the
cereal.
road, yeah, yeah. Eventually down the road, there are safeguards in place to look at, is this ingredients, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. But you can get there and be selling for a while. Whereas a nutrition facts label, there's some safeguards, some checks and balances before
Yeah.
you go to market. So
Right.
that's a whole other podcast. I'm not sure anyone listened to the legal sides of supplementation and regulation, but for those of us who know, it's a very different world between
Yeah.
food and supplements.
Yep, totally. So I know many of you out there saying, well, how much creatine? When creatine? How? What? When? Where? How? So to be mindful of our time, Joel and I are going to do a part 2 of our should athletes take or should teen athletes take creatine podcast. And in our next podcast, we're going to be talking about when you should take it, how much you should take it, what type of diet should support it, et cetera. So you're going to have to tune in and come back into our next podcast as we will dial in on all of that. But Joel, just generally speaking on what we talked about today, take home message for athletes, coaches, and parents when it comes to supplementing with creatine.
I would say it's an option for sure. I
Mhm.
think it needs to be taken in consideration everything else you're doing. I said it to Amy beforehand. You need to earn a supplement if I'm
Yep.
working with you. I need to know you're doing your diet's there, your recovery, your sleep, all these things. It's not magic, right?
Right.
All it does is allow your body to do more work. So I think for sure, it's an option. There's definitely some time and place for it. Again, the closer you are to an adult body, the less concerns we have or less
Yeah.
questions we have. And whenever possible, be making these decisions with a performance-based healthcare practitioner, sports
Yep.
dietitian, generally will be the one that are most informed or most up to date with the state of science. So
Yes.
follow Amy. You're listening to this podcast. You're already halfway there. So,
Thank you. Yeah, well, I have a handful of sports dietitians that see athletes at the sportsnutritionplaybook.com. And that's what we're here for, to help athletes perform, recover, and know what supplements to take and how much to take and all the different things. So, Joel, you're amazing. Thank you for being on. Where can people find you if you want them to, or if they want to
yeah.
find you?
As far as education and whatnot, I've worked write blogs and do podcasts on thorn.com, which is thorne.com. I'm on social media. LinkedIn is probably where you're gonna find me, most likely sharing articles and such. I'm not a big my social media is pictures of like national parks. So cool if you want to follow, but
We're
not where
nerdy
you find
science
it. Yeah.
people.
But yeah, so LinkedIn's where I'll
Yeah.
share, and then thorn.com is where a lot of my, kind of blogs and podcasts would be.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Until next time, talk to you then.